I'm bored. Let's read a book. Oh! Surprisingly, after another 10 Ks or so of trudging, when even the untiring Gerlach was flagging, and I dismounted to struggle alongside him on foot, the road began to descend. Not much, or perhaps it had only leveled out. We rested and shuffled on, and I marveled when I wasn't puffing and panting at the contradiction between the lack of any place to stop or even rest, and the clearly maintained rock walls of the road bed and the arched stone bridges. Guardrails? There weren't any. Nor were there road markers or signs, but there was also no sign of chaos, only solid stonework. Coming around a wider curve than I had seen so far, the road opened into a small valley, leading through a snow-dusted meadow of brown grass toward a group of 3 low stone buildings. Plumes of smoke rose from 2 of the 2 on the right, and I climbed back on the Gerlach. The stone road marker at the edge of the meadow read Carson. No explanation, just the name. The faintest of mists covered the valley, bearing an odor I could not place, not of brimstone nor of fire. Finally, after weaving a shield around the big provision sack, but not my saddlebags, I shook my head and chucked the reins. A rail-thin man waited by the central structure, under a peeling sign bearing the line of drawing a cup. "Welcome to the Golden Cup, traveler." His voice was neutral. The center of the building was entirely of stone, even to the peaked slate roof, except for the roof beams, doors, and narrow windows built to withstand storms and a heavy winter. Yet the meadow grass bore a touch of green, and the snows along the road, though it was still early winter, had not yet been that deep. I glanced behind the innkeeper to catch the crossbow leveled at me from the stone embrasure flanking the closed double doors of weathered white oak. Not exactly the friendliest of welcomes. I nodded toward the quarrel. Not everyone from Syrtis is friendly, and not all travelers claiming to come from Syrtis are from Syrtis. I ignored the veiled reference. "A room and some hot supper?" "3 golds for you, a silver for your horse." "What?" "We have to bring food from either Jellicoe or Passera," the innkeeper shrugged. "You can travel on if you like, or camp in a meadow for a silver." In my shape and in poor Gerlach's, the alternatives weren't exactly wonderful. For 3 golds, I'd hoped for a hot bath and the best of repasts, and more than hay for my horse. The innkeeper finally smiled, faintly. "Hot water we do have, even real soap." The stone-walled stable was almost empty, though the stalls were clean. 2 mules are at one end and next to a black mare. The tall bay whuffed as I let Gerlach past him, and 2 more empty stalls. Tired as I was, I brushed Gerlach until his coat regained some shine, letting the innkeeper, who seemed to double as an ostler, bring me a wooden bucket of grain. He too, for all his bluster, kept a distance from Gerlach. In the meantime, I had racked the saddle and tucked the provisions and my staff into a corner above the stall where, invisible as they were, no one would likely run into them either. "Little enough food there for you. Travel another 4 days to Passera, especially for your horse. There's not much forage. Might need to buy some grain cakes then. Half a silver for 2. I shook my head. Commercial extortion, it seemed. But I wasn't thinking that well and said nothing. "Supper first," I indicated. "Then a bath and bed. Whatever you wish, but we take payment in advance." Most innkeepers made a pretense of affability, but not this one. Supper, taken alone in a small dining room with a warm fire and 5 tables, was provided by a plumpish woman wearing a stained white apron. It consisted of spiced brandied apples, a thin pepper-laced potato soup, and thick slices of tough mutton with even thicker slices of brown bread. I ate it all and drank 3 glasses of red berry. "Quite a lot for a slender fellow," observed the woman, whom I took to be the innkeeper's wife. The innkeeper himself had vanished. I shrugged. "It's been a long, cold trip." "Mountain weather's been warmer than usual." "It was warmer than the blizzard on the hills of Cerdices, thunder, and snow up to my knees." A puzzled look crossed her face, then passed. "Would you like anything else?" "Directions to my room and then the bath." "The bathroom is at the end, that way." She pointed in the direction of the stable. "I'll show you your room." I barely glanced at the room, apparently the smallest of a half-dozen, if the doorways and spacing between them meant anything, and left only a cloak and saddlebags there. My coins were in the openly displayed purse, and in hidden slots of my boots and belt. Then we walked back toward the bath, down the stone-walled corridors, even the interior walls of stone, saving the doors themselves. Hot water they had, flowing from some sort of spring. The stone-walled room had been built around the spring, clearly, and the source of the faint metallic odor in the valley was definitely from the hot springs, of which there had to be more. Metallic-smelling water or not, bathing in the rock tub chiseled from stone was wonderful, loosening aches I hadn't even recognized. I didn't leave that healing flow of heat and relaxation, and dry myself with a thick brown towel until I resembled a prune. I also took the liberty of washing my undergarments and wringing them out. After all, for 3 golds I deserved a few extras, and neither the innkeeper nor his wife said a word when I walked back to my room barefoot and wearing just my trousers, with the rest of my clothes draped over my arm. The room, with a single narrow window looking out on the black meadow that I could not see in the darkness, contained a bed, a narrow wardrobe, and a candle in sconce above the bed. The window, 2 spans of real glass on a pivot frame, was wedged shut. The bed, narrow as it was, had sheets of and a worn coverlet. Though about blowing out the candle, certainly my eyelids were heavy enough, but the paper corner protruding from the belt pouch recalled the letter or note I hadn't even read. So I sat on the bed and unfolded the heavy paper. The reversed images of some letters, where the 2 sides had been folded together, told me that, despite the careful phrasing, the words had been placed on the heavy linen paper in haste. Laris. In traveling, even a wizard can be trapped while asleep. Reading the section on wards, alarms, in your book before you sleep in strange covers. Try also for your sake to take time to read the entire book before you make one too many mistakes. Spend some time doing something simple and thinking. You can't think and learn if you're always on the run. Since the Grey Wizard had been right more than once, I levered myself off the bed and pulled the bases of order from my pack. Then I slowly thumbed through the end sections until I found wards, taking several deep breaths to keep my yawns from overpowering me. I didn't quite understand the theory, but the mechanics were less difficult than healing, that darned woman, or even weaving my weather net. The interesting part of the wards were that they would work without my conscious direction. The bad part was that they didn't take too much. They didn't do much either, besides warn. I thought there might be more, but if so, I wasn't in shape to learn it. So I slipped the door wedge and bar in place, put my knife under my pillow, and blew out the candle. My eyes closed before the light died. I woke with a jolt from a dream of endless mountain trails. The room was dark, black, yet a ring of light from the wards surrounded the floor. Noises. I tried to get the sleep out of my mind, reaching for the knife, then I almost laughed. "Anything I can do for you?" I called. The sound stopped, but no one answered, although I could feel two bodies on the other side of the rough blank door. I waited, and they waited. The alarm kept sounding. "I really wouldn't if I were you," I added casually, wondering what would do if I attempted to break the door. The prying noise stopped again, and I tried to think, when all I really wanted to do was sleep. The wedge wouldn't hold up long, not against a determined attack. The whole sneaky effort meant the innkeeper was only after the weak. I walked across the cold stone floor and let my feelings examine the door and the frame, solid oak set in stone, with the hinges on the outside swinging into the room. Then I shook my head. Idiot, idiot. The innkeeper didn't want into the room. He was placing a bar through the iron handle on the other side to keep me from going out. The stone walls, a narrow window, all made sense. The innkeeper just didn't like direct violence. Checked again, the two were gone. Now that they were convinced I was safely captured. Lighting the candle, I stood up and walked to the window. If the wedges came out, finally I nodded and began to dress, wincing at the chill undergarments. They were still damp, but I could only hope my body heat would take care of that. Then I went on the window as quietly as I could, thanking Uncle starred at it silently the whole time. Not easy, but the exertion warmed me up. The chill and heat had taken their toll on the glues, and with a little help here and there, I managed to slide the whole window into the room. Out onto the frozen grass went my pack, cloak, and saddlebags. If I had been a pound heavier, I wouldn't have made it through the window narrow opening. Getting the window back in place, I cheated, using some of the sense-weaving order strength. But even by my father's lights, using power to fix something wasn't tempting chaos. Then I walked slowly, cloaked in darkness, to the stables. Gerlach fine, munching on some sort of grass. Setting another round of wards, I recovered my bedroll and curled up on some straw in the stall next to Gerlach. The first hint of light woke me, not the wards, which I dropped. I saddled Gerlach, listening for the innkeeper and hearing nothing. Then I used an old staff to pry open the storage closet and took 6 grain cakes, which I stuffed into the provisions sack. I really wanted just to take them to pay the innkeeper back. Besides, with the provisions from Justin, I wasn't even certain I would need them. But the east thorns looked cold, and Gerlach had saved my neck already, and then some. In the end, I left 4 coppers, probably too much. But that was the least that my wonderful, innate, and growing sense of order would let me leave. After all, despite his dubious hospitality, the innkeeper had bought them somewhere, and leaving the coins made me feel better. After sliding open the stable door with the reflective cloak around us, Gerlach and I stepped out into the license of the winter dawn. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Less than a K across the meadow, we came to a brook. I dropped the shield, looking for signs of pursuit. But the inn remained dark, without even a plume of smoke from the chimneys. After Gerlach drank, I replaced the cloak of reflected light until we reached the road and the marker that featured an arrow and the name Passera. The edges of the road contained a drifted snow, often up to Gerlach's knees. But the wind kept most of the road clear, as if it had been designed that way. Still, more than once we had to flounder through crusted and drifted snow, gathered into the most sheltered elbows of the road. Not knowing who or what to trust, and how I avoided the next inn, instead finding a sheltered cleft up a canyon from the road. Getting to the cleft and concealing our tracks was more work in the end than fortifying an inn room would have been. But I slept more soundly, even on the narrow, rocky, frozen ground out of the wind, and it didn't cost me 3 golds, or the equivalent duke's ransom, though I did wake up with the tip of my nose nearly frozen. Climbing the eastern walls of the East Thorns wasn't quite as draining, not quite, as surviving the winter kill storm. While it had taken 2 days to escape the storm, it nearly took 2 days more after Carson, just to get to the top of the southern pass. In that whole time, I passed 3 other groups heading towards Sardis, all of at least 4 riders, and all heavily armed. They had made my passage possible, in one instance having shoveled through a small snow avalanche across a tree road. They never saw me or Gerlach, not when I heard them from a distance, and removed us from the road in their sight. The weather never changed, cold, cloudy, with gusty winds sweeping in and out of the canyons and carrying fine dry snowflakes. What's more, at the top of the southern pass, there wasn't any view, just a crest in the road that began between nearly 2 sheer rock walls. At one instant, I was riding uphill and the next downhill. Not until I'd reached the top of the foothills overlooking Gallus, another day and another night spent under an outcrop shivering even within my bedroll, did I find a view. For nearly 3 k's the trail down was nothing but an open ledge slanted against a blackish granite. Halfway down I stopped, able to see anybody approaching in either direction, and guided Gerlach into an alcove back from the road. I climbed up to a flat overlook to look out over Gallus under the first full day of winter since leaving Jellicoe. Gallus didn't look much different from above than I had imagined Sardis might have. Just mixed and muddy browns, divided by thin gray lines that had to be stone walls or fences, and infrequent gray, brown, and whiter curving lines that were doubtless roads. Down toward my right, to the north, where the road broke away from the rocks, entered a line of forested hills that separated the meadows and hedgerows and stub fields from the East Thorns. I spotted an interweaving of smoke plumes in a cultivated valley. What I could see of the valley looked small, in any case. Passera, I guessed. Leaning back against the rock alcove with Gerlach right below, and the afternoon sun warming the black slab behind me, I finally reread Justin's note. I still hadn't had time to read the whole book, and on the mountainside wasn't exactly the place to do that in any case. But Justin had been right more than once, and that was more than enough reason to think about what I was to do before I descended the rest of the way into Galos and Passera. Besides the simple matter of survival, I had 2 problems neither insurmountable, but both requiring solutions. First, my supply of coins, not exactly large to begin with, was running short. The loss of nearly 4 golds for a short night's lodging in Carson and the green cakes for Gerlach had not helped in that matter. Although balanced against the payment for the sheep healing, I was somewhat better off than I would have been, and a good 150 k's further toward the West Thorns. Second, I didn't have the faintest idea of the problem or case behind whatever it was that I was supposed to resolve. This business of blind traveling and quests was getting tiresome, if not plain boring. Whatever I didn't know, I did know how to do 2 things. if I kept blundering talents and problems, sooner or later an unseen crossbow quarrel or rifle shot would leave me less than ideal shape, if not dead. That assumed that Gallus would allow rifles, some of the Kandarian Dushies classed firearms as chaos weapons, rather than undependable heat energy weapons. But Dad would be dead one way or another. I'd also realized from the unusual nature of the storm on the hills of Syrtis, and from an unregarded look at the nasty innkeeper's wife when I had mentioned the unseasonable storm, that the ice and snow had not been entirely natural, not at all. It also meant that someone hadn't exactly been able to locate me with magic or otherwise. Gerlach the pony was another question I had ignored and kept ignoring. Why did he trust me, and a few Osters only? Had his presence in Freetown been coincidental, or a matter of odds? I looked away from the view of Gallus and down the not-quite shaggy golden brown of his heavy coat. No animal less sturdy would have managed where we had gone through nearly so well. With another sigh, I reached out with my feelings, looking, and came away shaking my head. Gerlach was a mountain pony, but not just any mountain pony. Just as I have strengthened the innate sense of order within the sheep of Montgren, so had someone strengthened the order within Gerlach, to the point that the pony would lash out or shy away from anyone manifesting disorder. That was all, and yet I shook my head. Someone, something, had thought further ahead than I cared to speculate. Even with my back against the warm rock, I shivered. Still wasn't thinking fast enough. So I sat on the outcropping and tried to think about what to do next. I had to learn what was in the book and apply it. I had to make a living of sorts with enough space and time to read, and I had to avoid getting much notice. That was especially important, particularly if my disappearance from an apparently locked room in Carson were relayed to Antonin or whichever Chaos Wizard was after me. I didn't understand why, though. I wasn't dangerous as Justin, and Tamara was certainly as much of a threat as I was. I shook my head, wondering where she was and what she was doing. Avoiding further notice meant avoiding Passera. If it took a whole troop to cross the East Thorns, a single rider would be seen as a magician or bandit or common thief. And even given my recent outlays, the amount of coins I had carried would give full suspicion to one of those assumptions. All this led to the need to reach Fnard, a town large enough for me to seek a woodcrafter who needed an extra hand without raising too many questions. I sighed. Every time I thought, the problems got more complex and involved more than just me. Come on, we've got another piece to travel, and a few more nights on the road. Click, click. Gerlach's shoes cracked on the smooth stones of the highway as it descended down the long slope to Passera, and eventually toward Fnard. The blonde woman juggles a knife as she rides, glancing ahead, then back at the rotund trader perched on the gray mare that walks heavily beside the lead pack mule. No trouble yet. The trader eyes the black-haired woman shapely, even in the faded blue tunic and trousers on the scarred little battle pony, who scans the road ahead. The older woman, the black-eyed and black-haired one, turns to catch the trader's appraising stare. She touches the blade at her belt, and a faint smile crosses her lips. The trader sees the smile and the hand on the hilt of the blade and shivers. "See anything?" he stammers. "Could be. There's a line of dust headed our way. Only a single rider, though. No trouble there." "You fixing to join up with the Autarch?" asked the trader, each word tumbling out almost before the last one's finished. "Why?" asks the blonde. Word is that Kyphos needs blades. The otter doesn't care whether they're men or women, just so long as they're good. I don't know. The blonde's voice was flat. We'll see after we deliver you and collect our pay, laughs the older woman. Her laugh is not a laugh, and the trader shivers again. The blonde woman rides further ahead, and the dark-haired woman's free hand strays toward the hilt of her blade. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of my videos. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye!